So I want you to think about a time you were in a really high-stakes professional meeting,
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
right? All eyes are on you. The room gets completely quiet. And right in the middle of a sentence, your mind just goes totally terrifyingly blank.
It's awful. The word you need is it's just gone. It
Quiet?
is this universal, visceral kind of panic. I mean, you feel your heart rate spike, your face flushes.
Yeah, exactly.
Suddenly, just standing in front of your own colleagues feels like a life or death survival scenario.
It totally does. And that exact moment of panic, well, that's the foundation of our mission for today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fascinating masterclass on professional communication, and it's drawn from everyday English conversation strategies.
Which I love because it's so practical.
It is. The core premise from our sources is that true confidence in the workplace, it isn't about perfectly fluent execution. It's not this armor you put on to guarantee you never drop a word.
Right.
True confidence is mastering the art of what they call the calm continuation. It's trusting yourself to recover when things inevitably go sideways.
Which fundamentally changes the entire goal of communication, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, we spend so much time trying to engineer like a flawless presentation or a completely error-free conversation. But the reality of a professional environment, and I mean, especially for language learners navigating a non-native vocabulary, is that mistakes are unavoidable.
Right, they're just going to happen.
Exactly. So confidence isn't the absence of mistakes. It's the specific mechanism of how you handle the gap between what you intended to say and what actually happened.
So let's start right there with the blank mind. Because our source materials share a highly relatable scenario. It's about a professional giving a routine online meeting update.
Oh, the design team story.
Yeah, the design team. They had completed a first draft. They were waiting for client feedback. It's literally a one-sentence update.
Right. But during the call, the speaker forgets one specific word.
Just one word.
Just one. And instead of accepting that momentary gap, their threat response just completely takes over. They panic and they start rambling.
Yeah, they start saying things like, well, the project is moving forward and there are several things happening on our end, and we're actively working on those things right now.
Which means absolutely nothing.
Nothing. They completely bury the actual simple update under this mountain of nervous filler.
And when you look at the mechanics of what's happening in the brain there, I mean, it makes perfect sense. When you panic and start rambling, you're basically opening 50 new browser tabs in your brain simultaneously, trying to find that one missing word.
Right, the cognitive load spikes.
Yes, the system crashes and words just start spewing out. Taking a deliberate pause is essentially just hitting refresh to clear the RAM.
It's just a reset.
That is precisely what is happening neurologically. Public speaking anxiety, whether you're, presenting to a board or just giving a daily status update, it creates intense, distorted perceptions of reality.
In what way?
Well, in the speaker's mind, a 2-second pause feels like an agonizing 20-second silence. They feel this overwhelming pressure to fill the void, basically operating under the false assumption that silence equals incompetence.
But the listeners aren't experiencing it that way at all, are they?
Not at all. For the listener, nervous, meaningless speech creates far more confusion than a momentary silence ever could.
Because they're just waiting for the actual information.
Exactly. And for language learners especially, this is a crucial shift in perspective. Embracing momentary silence is infinitely more effective than over-explaining your way through a lost word.
So how do we practically hit that refresh button? Because the sources highlight 3 specific, actionable phrases to recover your footing without destroying your credibility.
Right, these are great. The first one is simply stating the reality of the moment. You just say, I lost my train of thought for a second.
I love how simple that is.
It is. It acknowledges the blank mind honestly, which, immediately diffuses the tension. The second is, let me say that more clearly. This is incredibly useful when you catch yourself starting to ramble and realize, I need to reset this sentence.
And the third one is actually my favorite, just
Yeah.
because of how it positions the speaker. You say, give me a moment to check my notes.
It's highly effective.
Right. Because consulting your notes isn't a failure of memory. It signals thoroughness.
Exactly. It tells the room that you care about accuracy over speed.
You are actively buying yourself time to organize your next idea rather than trying to escape the conversation.
Yeah.
And the perfectionism that crashes our system when we drop a word during a meeting is the exact same perfectionism that paralyzes us before we even open our mouths. Which brings us to the second major theme in the sources.
The paralysis of the starting line.
Yes, the anxiety of initiation. We see this constantly, right? In both written and spoken professional interactions.
Oh, everywhere.
There's a perfect example in the materials regarding a neighborhood group chat. The building manager posts that the water is being turned off for maintenance in the morning, but they completely forget to include the time.
A pretty important detail.
Right. So a resident wants to ask the obvious question, what time? But instead of just typing it, they spend 10 minutes drafting 4 different versions of this text message.
4 drafts for a text message.
4. They're just terrified of sounding, too direct or demanding.
They are subjecting a routine logistical question to a full editorial review.
Exactly. And while they're agonizing over the tone, another resident just types, "Do we know the exact time?" and hits send.
And gets the answer?
Yep. The manager replies immediately, around 9 a.m. The first person was completely trapped by their own imaginary scenario of failure.
It's a classic trap, honestly. We project our own anxieties onto the recipient. We imagine that our phrasing is being heavily scrutinized for nuance. But in reality, in a professional or logistical setting, the recipient usually only cares about utility. Can they extract the necessary information from your message? Yes or no?
The fear creates this dramatic narrative, but real life usually just demands a 2-line reply.
Exactly. So to combat this, the sources introduced this brilliant tool called the One Review Rule for professional messages.
Okay, break that down for us.
It's a mechanism to reduce cognitive load. If you write an email or a message and it clearly states what you need, you are allowed to review it exactly once.
Just once.
Just once. Then you must hit send. The logic there is really sound. You ask yourself one question: will the recipient understand what I am asking for?
Right.
If the answer is yes, you hit send before the brain's threat detection system can invent 10 new social problems that don't actually exist.
I need to start using that today.
Yeah.
But the sources actually take this initiation anxiety a step further into physical environments.
Oh, the workshop story.
Yeah. There's a story about a woman attending a weekend public speaking workshop. She gets to the venue early. She's standing outside the classroom door. She hears people chatting inside, and she completely freezes.
Just totally paralyzed.
The anxiety is so intense,
Yeah.
she actually starts inventing an escape plan. She's pretending to be on a phone call so she can walk back to her car.
Her brain emotionally hijacked the situation. I mean, logically, she knew she had registered and paid to be there.
Right, she wanted to be there.
Exactly. But emotionally, that closed door represented an insurmountable social threat. She was only saved because a volunteer happened to look through the glass, open the door, and engaged her. The choice to initiate was taken completely out of her hands.
So to prevent that kind of physical paralysis, the sources suggest the 3-second rule.
Which is a game changer.
It is. When you approach a threshold, whether it's a doorway or a moment when the manager asks for questions in a meeting, you commit to acting within 3 seconds.
But
You prepare only your very first line. Something simple like, "Hi, I don't think we've met, I'm Alex." You say the line, listen to the response, and let the conversation develop naturally. You actively prohibit yourself from pre-planning a 5-sentence script.
because scripting a conversation in your head is a defense mechanism, it gives you the illusion of control. But while you are running that script internally, the actual conversation is happening without you in the real world.
Okay, but let's unpack this a bit, because if I only prep the opening line like, "Hi, I'm Alex," and then just stop,
Yeah.
aren't I just walking blindly into another blank mind scenario? Doesn't that lack of planning guarantee I'll freeze on line 2?
I mean, it feels that way, sure. But neurologically, the anxiety is tied almost entirely to the anticipation of the event, not the event itself.
Wait, really? The anticipation is worse?
Oh, by far. The threat detection system is firing because you are standing at the threshold debating whether it is safe to enter. The 3-second rule acts as a circuit breaker for that internal debate. Once you cross the doorway and state your name, the context changes. You are no longer deciding whether to participate. You are already participating.
Ah, I see.
The conversational momentum takes over, and your brain shifts from fight or flight to active listening.
So action comes first, and the confidence basically follows the movement.
Exactly.
Okay, so momentum gets you into the room, and deliberate pauses keep you grounded. But eventually, in any professional environment, you are going to say the wrong thing. You are going to make a definitive error.
Yes, you are.
And how you handle that error dictates your long-term professional credibility.
Which brings us to a really highly nuanced distinction in the sources. The difference between a weak recovery and a strong recovery when owning a mistake.
Right. They detail a scenario where a professional accidentally tells a client their appointment is at 10:00 a.m. instead of the correct time, which is 1:00 p.m.
A massive scheduling error.
Huge. And the instinct in that vulnerable moment is to deploy a weak recovery.
Right, and a weak recovery is characterized by excessive apologies, over-explaining how the mistake happened, and blaming external factors.
Saying things like, oh, I'm so sorry. My calendar was acting up. It was a really busy morning. I was looking at the wrong line.
Yeah, and looking at it objectively, a weak recovery is basically an ego defense. You are over-explaining because you want to manage the client's perception of you.
You want them to know you aren't incompetent, you were just distracted.
Exactly. But it forces the client to stand there and listen to your excuses instead of getting their actual problem solved.
Right. It makes your emotional discomfort the center of the interaction.
Yes. Whereas a strong recovery shifts the focus entirely to the solution. It acknowledges the error clearly, states the correct information, and offers a practical next step.
So what does that sound like?
So instead of a rambling excuse, a strong recovery sounds like, I apologize, I gave you the wrong time. Your appointment is at 1:00 p.m. I can check if we have an earlier opening available today.
The correction comes first. It requires fewer words, but it does significantly more work.
It does. And for language learners, the sources really emphasize this as a critical strategy. If you use the wrong word or tense, the instinct is often to over-apologize and say, I'm so sorry, my English is terrible today,
Oh, I hear that all the time.
which is a destructive habit. Saying my English is terrible forces the listener to manage your embarrassment.
Right.
It takes a temporary, easily fixable vocabulary issue and elevates it into a sweeping judgment about your overall ability.
So how should they reframe it?
Replacing those excessive apologies with clear professional correction. Sorry, let me try that sentence again. That keeps the attention firmly on the message, not on the medium.
But, the sources don't sugarcoat the reality of these situations either. In that client appointment story, the professional uses the strong recovery. They own the mistake perfectly. But the client is still visibly annoyed.
Right. They point out how inconvenient it is because they already arranged their morning.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of what effective communication actually guarantees. There is this pervasive myth that if you use the perfect combination of words, the other person will always be reasonable, agreeable, and happy.
We really do think communication is a magic wand for conflict resolution, don't we?
We totally do.
But it isn't. You can communicate with absolute clarity and professionalism and still encounter frustration. Confidence does not mean you have the power to control the other person's emotional reaction.
That's a huge takeaway.
It is. Confidence allows you to remain clear and responsible while they are unhappy. When the client expressed their frustration, the confident response wasn't to argue or invent new excuses.
Right.
It was to acknowledge the emotion. I understand why this is frustrating. Restate the available options, and accept that you cannot force them to instantly forgive you.
You accept responsibility for the error, but you do not accept unlimited blame.
Beautifully said.
And accepting small errors calmly actually builds long-term trust, right? Because it proves to clients and colleagues that you won't lie or deflect when things go wrong,
Exactly.
which naturally transitions into our next major area from the sources, taking responsibility for your boundaries.
Yes. Moving from owning your own mistakes to confidently holding a line against the expectations of others.
Right. The sources outline a classic workplace disagreement. A team is discussing a project deadline, and the consensus is leaning heavily toward finishing by Friday.
Okay.
But one team member knows unequivocally that the final internal review cannot be completed by Friday. It makes that deadline totally unrealistic. Monday is literally the only safe option.
Right. We've all been in that meeting.
Right. But when asked for their opinion, the team member hides their professional assessment under this mountain of qualifiers. They say things like, well, Friday could possibly work, though maybe I'm being too cautious here. There might be a small chance we need more time.
They bury the lead because they're terrified of sounding negative or uncooperative.
Yep. They try to protect the team's enthusiasm, but in doing so, they deprive the team of the accurate logistical information they desperately need.
Over-explaining or softening a boundary usually stems from a fear of being perceived as difficult. But paradoxically, lack of clarity is what actually makes you difficult to work with.
That's so true.
To counter this, the sources provide a highly effective three-part structure for setting professional boundaries or disagreeing without appearing rude.
Right. The structure is main view, one reason, practical suggestion.
Correct. So instead of the rambling, qualified response, you state the main view clearly. I don't think Friday gives us enough time.
Okay.
You follow with exactly one reason, because the final review process is still incomplete. And you close with a practical suggestion. Could we send the draft on Friday and commit to the final version on Monday?
I noticed looking at the sources that they're very strict about providing only one reason. Why is it structurally important to stop at one?
Oh, this is fascinating, because adding multiple reasons dilutes the strength of your boundary. If you give someone 3 reasons why a deadline won't work, human nature dictates that they will immediately attack the weakest of the 3 reasons.
Oh, wow, that's so true.
Right. It turns a boundary into a negotiation. One solid, factual reason stands as a definitive professional assessment.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It prevents the long, unnecessary explanations that just invite debate.
Exactly.
And this structure scales perfectly to everyday social interactions as well, right?
Yeah.
Like when declining an invitation to an event you just don't want to attend. You don't need to invent an imaginary logistical emergency.
Right. You don't need to claim your car broke down.
Or you have a family crisis.
Mm.
A simple, thank you for inviting me, but I won't be able to make it, is entirely sufficient.
It really is.
But wait, if I give a one-sentence no to a close colleague without explaining myself, aren't they going to assume I'm just being cold? Doesn't a short answer risk damaging the relationship?
This is a vital distinction to internalize. Clear does not mean cold.
Clear does not mean cold.
Exactly. You can deliver that sentence with incredible warmth, gratitude, and a genuine smile. But warmth does not obligate you to provide a detailed defense of your time.
Right.
If a colleague presses you, you can simply add, I already have plans, or I need a quiet evening to recharge. Confidence means realizing you do not have to over-explain your boundaries to make the other person comfortable with them.
I love that. So we've explored the mechanics of the moment. We've used the 3-second rule to get in the room. We've used pauses to recover from blank minds. We've owned our mistakes, and we've set clean boundaries.
But the sources address one final crucial element.
The aftermath.
Yes.
Yeah.
The dreaded 2 a.m. replay.
Oh, no. Exactly. You can execute all of these strategies perfectly all day, but when you lie down to sleep, your brain completely ignores the 10 successful interactions.
Yep.
And it obsessively replays the one sentence where you stumbled slightly.
That is the negativity bias in action. From an evolutionary standpoint, your brain is wired to scan for threats, and social embarrassment registers as a threat. The brain fixates on the awkward pause to try and solve it so it doesn't happen again.
It's exhausting. But to break that cycle, the sources detail a specific documentation practice. They call it the 4-part confidence log entry, or the confidence note.
This is a brilliant tool.
It really is. It's designed to track your professional progress and objectively document your growth after difficult workplace interactions.
Right. It requires you to write down 4 specific data points after a challenging moment. 1, what I did. 2, what I feared. 3, what actually happened. And 4, what I can repeat next time.
Let's apply that to the story of the woman paralyzed outside the public speaking workshop.
Okay, yeah.
After she successfully navigates that event, her confidence note would strip away all the emotional distortion. It would say, what I did, I walked into a room full of strangers and introduced myself.
Simple fact.
Right. What I feared everyone would stare at me and judge me for being nervous. What actually happened? The guy sitting next to me, Marcus, admitted he was so nervous he almost drove home.
I love that reality check.
Exactly. And finally, what I can repeat next time, I can use my name as a simple opening line.
The mechanism behind this tool is just profound, because you are not writing down hollow affirmations. You are writing down literal empirical proof of your own resilience.
You have the data.
Yes. Over time, reviewing these logs rewires your brain's threat detection system. It proves to your nervous system that the reality of a situation is consistently easier and far more mundane than the catastrophic imaginary scenarios your anxiety produces.
And some of the most valuable entries in that log are going to start with a mistake. The victory isn't that you were flawless. The victory is that you remained in the room, managed the error, and recovered.
Which brings us full circle to the definition of confidence we started with.
Exactly. Confidence is just the act of calm continuation. You drop a word in presentation, you hit the mental refresh button with a deliberate pause, and you continue.
You quote the wrong time to a client, you correct it clearly without an ego defense, and you continue.
A colleague pushes back on your deadline, you hold your one factual reason, and you continue.
You learn to remain professionally present even when you cannot completely control the moment.
So as you go back into your professional environment this week, we really challenge you to test these mechanisms. Pick one small action you've been delaying because of anxiety.
Draft the message, apply the one review rule, and just hit send.
Or use the 3-second rule to ask a question at your next meeting before the internal debate can even begin.
And if there is one final thought to leave you with, it's about how we view those moments of friction. We started by discussing the desire for a flawless armor of perfection.
Right.
But if true confidence is literally built through the biological and psychological act of recovering, then a perfectly smooth, mistake-free day is actually a day where you didn't grow. What if, instead of dreading the moment your mind goes blank or fearing your next stumble in a meeting, you quietly welcomed it? Because that inevitable crack in the armor is the exact moment you are granted the opportunity to practice your calm continuation.
A flawless day is a missed opportunity. That fundamentally changes how you walk into a room.
It really does.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Drop the armor, document your recoveries, and we will catch you next time.